Hello and welcome to High Holiday Highlights Video 10. In this video we are going to take a look at the Haftarah, the reading from the prophet section of the Bible, the reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Just as a review, the Jewish Bible is broken into three parts. The first part is the Torah, which is the story from the beginning of creation through the death of Moses. The second is known as Nevi'im, section of the prophets, not only including prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah, but also the books of Samuel, the books of Kings, the book of Judges, and the third section are the writings, like the book of Esther, the book of Ruth, the book of Psalms. The Haftarah for each Sabbath and holiday is drawn from this middle section of the Jewish Bible, the section known as the prophets. Again, it can be anywhere from any place from the beginning of the book of Joshua all the way through the last of the prophets. The Haftarah for the first day is about a woman, Hannah, who, like her counterpart in the Torah, Sarah, is unable to bear a child. And just as the Torah story reflects the idea of God remembering as Sarah, in this Haftarah the same thing. God remembers Hannah and eventually enables her to give birth, and her son Samuel will become one of the great judges in all of Israel. A word about this idea of infertility. In biblical times and in ancient times, a parent or a woman who was not able to bear a child often sat in social isolation. There was a stigma, certainly an unfair stigma, that was associated with her. Today, aside from some religious communities, women have the choice to have children, not to have children, to be married, not to be married. They have a choice not only as to whether they will have children, but under what circumstances in which to have and to raise a child. But back in biblical times, it wasn't all so simple. Eventually, Hannah does give birth to Samuel, again, one of the greatest judges in ancient Israel. But I have one difficult moment in this Haftarah. It's a moment when Hannah, who is bewildered and more saddened by her inability to give birth, she goes up to Shiloh. Shiloh was the central ritual community for ancient Israel before Jerusalem. Shiloh was the place where the ark was where the ark was placed. Shiloh was the precursor to Jerusalem. She goes up to Shiloh, and this really shows her intent. She wants to go to the most sacred place within Israel to offer a very heartfelt prayer in hopes that she could give birth to a child. But as she prays for a child, the high priest at that time, Eli, observes her and mistakes her fervor for inebriation. He sees her lips moving but no words coming out of her mouth because the prayer was coming from within. He mistakes this for inebriation and he calls attention to that. What bothers me about this is that religious leaders do have an obligation to address all kinds of societal issues. However, before criticizing, before admonishing, before even advising, they need to understand the intent of a specific individual. In other words, before you are about to admonish someone, even to give constructive advice, a religious leader needs to have a reading about what is really going on with an individual. We have an obligation to honor and to support not merely to judge. And I think in this particular case, Eli lost a cherished and important opportunity to provide much needed comfort to Hannah. He should have seen and recognized and even felt her deep, deep pain and her sadness. And he should have been there, if not literally, then to symbolically hold her hand, to be there to offer words of comfort, not even advice. Certainly advice was irrelevant at this time, but he could have just been there, even if not offering anything, just to be there. His mere presence would have suggested some kind of comfort, and there would be a sense of pathos. But rather, he mistakes her prayer for drunkenness. And I think in that lies the error that he made. I can attest to the fact that all clergy make mistakes. But what bothers me about Eli was not the fact that as the priest, not the fact that he made an error, but the fact of how he made the error. He made the error because he didn't take the time to be sensitive enough to what it was that Hannah was expressing. And I think this scenario is an important lesson for us as clergy, as we also undergo examination of the soul during this season. We need to do so as individuals, but we need to do so as professionals, to be able to acknowledge some of the mistakes that we've made, but also the mistakes that we've made by virtue of not listening, by not being attentive, because those are the kinds of mistakes that are most regrettable, the kinds of mistakes that should never have been made. So that's a little bit about the Haftarah and Shana Tova.